these people are all wrong. You don't need to rejig antitrust precedent.
If you just focused on, these things shouldn't be free and they should pay consumers, you're really missing the boat.
There's absolutely an antitrust case here that could be made, and one, that platforms raise prices on producers. Historically, we've always looked at the consumer to say, are you raising the prices on the consumer? We saw this with Standard Oil. We saw this with train companies, right? Taking advantage of the consumer and raising prices. AT&T. But now, the argument that people are trying to make to say that they're violating antitrust law is that privacy has a cost to it. And because these companies are taking advantage of your privacy, there's a cost. Here's the problem. Do that cost value analysis, right? Every platform is either free or much cheaper than the alternative. So now I take free or cheaper, and then all the value that comes from that, whether that's Google search, whether that's YouTube, whether that's Amazon, fill in the blank, Facebook. And then you say, how much is the cost, the penalty to the consumer for them to, by the way, voluntarily use these services? And then does the consumer come out ahead or not? We'll be in court for 10 to 20 years, and you'll find that, most likely the consumer wins. The consumer pretty much always wins. That's the whole value prop of platforms. The consumer wins. That's why they are so dominant. When you run that analysis on the producer and you say, does Amazon raise prices on their third-party sellers? They absolutely do. Whether it's the holiday season and now they're jacking up the take rate, or the fulfillment costs, rental fees, or now the holiday season is over and they jack up the rental fees even more because they want you to clear out the inventory from the warehouse. And then you have to pay for those fulfillment fees to ship your product back to yourself. Or whether it's the YouTubes and the content platforms and the social media companies of the world demonetizing you off the platform or banning you or taking down your content. This is all a form of putting the producer at a disadvantage. There's absolutely an antitrust case here that could be made, and one, that platforms raise prices on producers. The problem is it's not sexy. It's like the 1% of the 1% of the population, right? How many third-party sellers are on Amazon? How many creators are on YouTube and Twitter? And it's a much smaller portion of the population. It's not what's in vogue with privacy is horrible and all these kinds of things.
I think that also it comes down to who's reporting this. The media is familiar with advertising models, so they focus on things they're competing with, Google and Facebook, which leads to, I think, a red herring focus on, free products are taking advantage of us. And you miss the producer dynamic that you're describing, which is happening on Google. It's happening on Amazon, which isn't a free product. It's happening on all of these platforms where you have this producer-consumer dynamic, both customer groups. The producer is often the one that gets squeezed. If you just focused on, these things shouldn't be free and they should pay consumers, you're really missing the boat.
Well, the good thing, I think, for Google and Apple is the DOJ is reviewing Google and Apple. And from what I've heard, the DOJ is firmly looking at this on the consumer side, the privacy side. Basically means DOJ is not going to get any wins. The FTC, from what I've heard, is much more willing. It also has previously stated an interest in protecting small businesses. So all the FTC needs to do is make a connection that small businesses are also a customer group. And the past 50 years of antitrust all fits. It all works. You don't need to rejig antitrust precedent. And, I'll be retired by the time the antitrust precedent is revised to actually classify these tech monopolies as monopolies. They're monopolies.